You're psyching me out. Okay. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to discuss the first adult romance novel I ever read, which was The Tycoon's Revenge, Baby for the Billionaire by Melody Ann. Wait, hold on. We're a historical romance novel, chill. Like, this is throwing off our aesthetic. Because here's the thing, here's the challenge. Anna and I, while editing and talking, realized, ooh, we still have a lot of room to grow. Let's say that. So we were like, let's not waste any of the good books. Let's just review bad books, and we'll get the bad out of us. So here I am, because we were like, well, what's the first romance novel you read? And technically, the season isn't a romance novel because it's a YA novel. Pretty sure that's the category it's in. And unfortunately, it's this one. I was 13 years old. I downloaded the Kindle app on my phone, or on my iPod. It wasn't a phone, it was an iPod. And it lists all of the bestsellers in the free category for romance. And I was like, well, I want to read that. And unfortunately, this is the first one I actually read. So let's review it first, and then I'll recount it for you. Basically, the book is garbage. It's really bad. If you couldn't tell from the title alone, it's bad. It's written, The Tycoon's Revenge, Baby for the Billionaire, is written by Melody Ann. If I could, I would rate it a 0 out of 5. I'll do a 1 out of 5. It's a garbage book. There's nothing good. Like, at the time,
no redeeming qualities?
I don't like anything about this book. You go along, like, at 13 years old, even then I knew, this isn't good. And I still read it. We got just dumb bitches running all over the place. There is no plot. The chemistry between the characters is not there. The writing itself is horrible. This one is a New York Times bestseller. How? There's no real reason for them to be together except he took her virginity 10 years ago and she's got a kid and...
Is the kid his?
Yes!
Okay, well, you didn't say.
Assume they're in love through a mystical bond called the taking of her virginity. Anyways, I'm spoiling, guys, but I don't care because it's a trash book. So yeah, I rate this book a 1 out of 5 only because that's the bare minimum that I can give it. Now let's recount it. Starts out with dumb bitch number 1 and dumb bitch number 2. I'm kidding. They have names. They're just the most stereotypical dumbass names. Anyway, we got dumb bitch number 1, which is Jasmine. We've got dumb bitch number 2, which is Derek. Only Derek is actually introduced first at the book. He's at some big fancy party in Seattle, and all of these women are trying to hit on him, and he's like, I don't want to be here. Oh, he's 28. They're both 28, by the way. So this guy, he's a billionaire at 28.
As you do.
Yeah, he's gotten rich through taking over companies and dismantling them and selling them off. Okay, so he's at this party, he's 28, he's a billionaire, all these hoes are climbing up on him, and he's like, I don't want them, but all of these women, all these gold diggers, they want me now because Seattle wrote me up as one of their sexiest bachelors, so now all these hoes are like, gotta nab him, and he doesn't want to be at this party, but he came anyways because his dad was like, come to this party. He sees his dad, and he's like, Dad, why am I here? And his dad is like, because he's here, dun dun dun. But when he says he's referring to a dude named David Freeman, I think. I don't care. Because here's the thing. I'm going to explain the backstory because they do it really odd here. They literally just dropped the entire backstory. They're like, what's suspense? Don't know it. So basically, Derek, from the wrong side of the tracks, grew up poor but really hardworking. Jasmine grew up really rich because of her dad, David. Okay?
Wait, is this...
This is the same guy that he hates. So Jasmine grew up rich. She grew up with a nice attitude. So Jasmine started dating Derek on the slide. Like, they're both like, we're in love.
How did they meet?
They met at an abandoned church. They have sex for the first time, and he's like, you're 18, I'm 18, let's run away and get married. And she's like, okay. And so when she gets home, her dad is like, you were seeing him. And she's like, yes, I was, because I'm 18 and I can do that and I'm allowed to do whoever I want. And she's like, and I love him. And the dad is like, you're right. You're 18. You're allowed to do whatever you want or whoever you want. She goes, thank you for respecting my adult choices. By the way, her relationship with her dad is that her mom died and he never paid attention to her.
Of course.
Per usual Harlequin rules.
How old was she when her mom died?
A baby.
Oh.
So she's grown up with no female influence. Her dad is like, I respect your choices. Tell me how you're going to run away together. And she goes, we're going to meet at a church. And he goes, okay. I want you to go run some errands for me. And she's like, okay. So then, when she finally does go to the church to meet up with Derek, he's not there. And she waits all day and all night, and he never shows up. And she's very heartbroken and sad about this. And she's like, I can't believe he did this to me. He just left me here all day, all night. And by the way, she's never connected it. This woman is 28 goddamn years old. She's never once thought, my father, who is not a nice guy, who consistently ignores me, went quiet, accepted my life decisions, and then the supposed love of my life
disappeared.
Yeah. Anyways, all this is told to us, the reader, while they're like glancing at one another across the room. She's like, I see that he's become big and successful and rich and even more handsome. And he's like, I see Jasmine has become even sexier, but just as conniving. He doesn't think very highly of her, because from his perspective, what happened is that he was at the church super early because he's like, I'm ready to get on an elopement train. And the dad, David, showed up and was like, Jasmine's over you in this little fling. Here's money because she wants to make sure you're compensated. And Derek feels like, oh, she's paying me like she would a whore. Goodbye.
So he doesn't take the money?
He doesn't take the money, but he is like, fuck them bitches. And he literally is like, I'm gonna ruin them. Or I'm gonna ruin David specifically, but also Jasmine. That's why this book is called The Tycoon's Revenge.
Okay, why would he ruin David though if Jasmine's the one that broke up with him?
Because he's like, David is a cocky. He hates David. Period. Because David wasn't nice to him and was always like, I'm better than everyone because I've got money and you're from the wrong side of the tracks. None of this book actually makes sense. You know that, right? So all this is explained to us. Really badly, by the way. David has thrown this party to raise investors and stuff like that because his company is in danger. Meanwhile, Derek is like, it's too late. I'm already going to take it over. So then the next chapter, he's successfully taken over David's company, and David storms into Derek's office, and he's just like, you won't get away from this, and this won't be the last time you see me. He never actually shows up again. Like, he talks on the phone, but he is not actually at all involved in this plot line.
Like, this won't be the last you see of me.
I literally wrote a note where it's like, last time we see him. Derek doesn't ever interact with this bitch again. It's only Jasmine. Meanwhile, Jasmine is showing up to work, and she's super worried. She
works at the company?
She does work at the company. She's super worried about this takeover. She didn't even know it was happening because she woke up and she found out about it via the news. And she called her dad, but her dad hasn't called her back. So she's just like...
Does she even know that Derek owns the company now?
No, of course. Because what happens is she shows up to work and she's really nervous because she needs this job to support her and her son, Jacob, who is 9 years old and born of the one time she actually fucked. It's like, you didn't... Okay.
Hold on. She needs this job to support herself because her dad won't give her money?
Correct. Yeah. Oh, and also, from Derek's perspective, we found out that David really sucked as an employer. So yeah. He, underpaid his employees and didn't give them health care, and he was embezzling. That also never comes up into play, by the way.
Okay. Also, so she's never slept with anybody else?
No. And even though she's really hot. She's really worried about her job, and she shows up to work, and they've changed up the security team, but one of the security guards from the company is still there, and he's like, here's a temporary ID because they're getting ready to get rid of tons of employees. And she's like, oh boy, I'm scared. She gets up to her office. When she goes into her office, she sees that there are 3 employees in her office. I've said her office so many times. But she sees 3 people in there, and they're going through all of her stuff, and she's like, excuse you, this is my shit. Get the... And she's like, I don't know who told you could come in here, but you are not allowed, and you're not entitled to rifle through all my shit, except she doesn't say it like that because she's actually a spineless character. She's not a spineless character, it's just that she's written really badly.
Does she have, like, an important job? Or
She's HR. She hires people and shit.
Okay.
Anyways, so she's like, you're not allowed to do that. And she storms off to the boss, and she's like, I don't normally get this angry, but I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. And she storms in, and she's going to be like, fuck you to this guy. And she starts going off, and she's like, you have no right. I'm an employee for right now until you fire me. This is my stuff. I'm entitled to privacy. And this dude turns around, and she's like, Derek. And then it's like, dun dun dun.
Did he know that was her office?
No, he didn't know. She worked there. He's like, oh, Jasmine works. I'm sure this is just a job to cushion her pockets because she can't work, probably. I haven't known her since I was 18, but I assume she's just a lazy bitch. Yeah.
Did she go to college?
She did go to college. She went to college.
Who looked after the kid?
Not explained at all. She has no friends, by the way. Literally no friends that ever feature into this plotline. It turns out she's very surprised to see it's Derek, and he's very surprised to see it's Jasmine, and essentially she tells him off, and she's like, I'm still an employee, so fuck you. And
why were they going through her stuff?
Because they were checking it, and they're like, he's getting ready to fire tons of people, and they were looking for files, and she's like, I will send you the files, but don't come to my fucking office anymore. Amy goes back to Derek, and she's like, Derek, I thought we were going to talk about all the people who stay on or don't stay on, and she probably shouldn't stay on since we said all the higher-ups should be fired. And Derek is like, I thought I said I was the fucking boss. So then he's like, Jasmine stays until I say she doesn't stay. And he sends Amy off on her happy ways. And he's like, she's getting too possessive. Even though we've never once fucked, she wants to fuck me, she's not gonna fuck me because I don't like power-hungry females. Meanwhile, Jasmine goes home. She and Derek kind of have a thing where they have to go over files together, and then she's like, I'm going home because it's late. And he's like, fine. She rushes off, and mentally Derek is like, I'm going to enjoy this. So Jasmine leaves work. She goes to her son Jacob's wrestling match, and he's 9 years old, and he's really sweet, and she shows up, and she's like, did I miss your match? And he's like, no, it's cool, but she's also like, Jasmine can also tell that he was nervous about her missing the match, and he's relieved. Yeah. Jacob is the stereotypical, he's a good kid. He really is a good kid. For once, I'd like to read one of these Harlequins where it's like, he's a piece of shit. Straight up, he's a piece of shit. Why wouldn't he be? I'm a single mother. I'm stressed all the fucking time. Of course he acts out. There's no father around here to, like, I can't do it. I work. I do everything I can, and he's a piece of shit. And then the dad shows up, and it's like, I'm your dad. This kid is like, fuck you, I'm a tiny little gremlin. That would be an interesting book. So, meanwhile, in Derek's side of the world, he gets back to his condo that is normally big and empty, and he finds his cousin Drew, who is there at the condo drinking some hard liquor, scotch, whiskey, something brown. So Derek is like, oh, they have this really cheesy talk about, like, you're gonna drink up all my liquor, ha ha ha, and let's go out. And they go out.
Like, performative masculinity.
Exactly. You're starting to get this book. So they go out to drink and eat at this dive bar, and they're in jeans and normal shirts, and it explains their backstory, which is that they grew up, they're cousins, they were all only children, and they grew up together, and they're more like brothers than cousins. Mm-hmm. And there's Derek, Drew, and Ryan. Don't know why they didn't keep up with the D-name theme. Like, if you're gonna do it, fucking commit. They're eating at this dive bar, and it's like, you'd never guess that they were billionaires based on their apparel, but this was the life they preferred, but it's like, really?
Hold on. His cousin is a billionaire, too?
Yes. And Drew is like, you finally got the revenge you wanted on this dude who barely wronged you 10 years ago. And Derek is like, yes, I finally got the revenge. And Drew is like, is it as good as you wanted? And Derek is like, And Drew is like, what about Jasmine? Have you seen her? And Derek is like, ooh, definitely don't know what to say on that. And Drew is like, you've definitely run into her, haven't you? What's the plan there? And Derek is like, I don't know. Because he's like, I want to get my revenge. I definitely want to fuck her. But at the same time, Like, she doesn't seem like a bad person. Meanwhile, Drew is like, you know, Jasmine never really did seem like a bad person. Anyways, it's the next day at work. Derek and Jasmine are forced to work. It's not forced. Jasmine is forced. Derek is forcing her. And they're going over case files, and she's like, this employee, Henry, is really good, and he should stay on in the company. Meanwhile, Derek is like, okay, Henry gets fired first. Because he's like, I don't even think she's qualified for this job. Whoever she votes should stay is probably also unqualified. They go out to lunch. She's like, I will stay at the office. And he's like, it's a business lunch. Come with me to the restaurant. And she's like, okay, more forced contact. They go off to this restaurant. It's Italian, of course. They eat, they order their food, they eat, they're talking. We don't actually get to hear their real conversation. And Jasmine's like, I've got to go to the bathroom. When she gets in the bathroom, who do you think's in there?
Amy?
Yeah. Here's the thing.
Is Amy, like, stalking them?
It's never said. It's just Amy is here, and Amy is like, you're a whore, and he's gonna get tired of you, and also we're gonna get married. And meanwhile, Jasmine is like, married? And she's like, why would you want to marry somebody if you legitimately thought he was sleeping with me? And Amy is like, he can fuck whoever he wants, because when the ring's on my finger, it won't matter anymore. So then Jasmine goes back, and she's literally like, I'm done, to Derek, and she just leaves. She's like, he can pay. He forced me to come here anyways, which is like, kudos, Jasmine, you're not wrong. Meanwhile, Derek is like, that's an odd twist of events. And he's like, I wonder what brought on that mood change. It's not going to be addressed until like 9 chapters later. So he leaves. They go back to the office. They interview Henry, and Henry is a really nice, competent dude, and Derek is all kinds of pissed off because he's like, oh fuck, he's actually good at his job, I can't fire him, even though I want to fire him, and Jasmine is like, see, I was right, you shouldn't fire him. They get upset, they get in a fight, somehow he kisses her, and then they fuck.
In the office?
In the office,
well,
on the table, he literally tears her panties apart. They're done, he's like, that was awesome. Meanwhile, she's like, I'm gonna go have a breakdown in the bathroom. She has a breakdown, she comes back outside, she's like, okay, we can finish work. And they continue working until like 6 o'clock, at which point Henry like peeks back into the office and he's like, oh, by the way, my wife wants to tell you to come to this dinner party and not to bring anything because you're too good at bringing stuff. She wants to spoil you. And then Derek is like, oh, he is married. And it's like, didn't his file say he was married, or wasn't he wearing, I don't know, a wedding ring? So there's the next day at work. They're laying off more people that need to be laid off. And this one dude, I think his name is Alan, when it's time for him to get fired, he blows up at Jasmine. He's like, your father constantly was talking about what a waste of space you and your bastard son are. And he spouts off all this garbage, and Jasmine is like, my dad wouldn't say that. And Derek is like, are you sure? Alan gets kicked out by security because he's like, he keeps going off at Jasmine. Derek is like, okay, I know I said I wanted to ruin her, but fuck you, because now that I've had sex with her again, I care about her emotional well-being. That's how it works. So he calls security on this dude. That dude gets dragged off, and Jasmine just cries all over Derek. Goes into the bathroom, cries some more. When she comes back out, she's like, I'm taking the day off. And she leaves, and Derek is like, yeah, that's cool. You've had a lot to go through and process. So she leaves. She drives home, calls her dad on the phone, and she leaves a message. She's like, we just fired Alan today, and he said a lot of things that you supposedly said about me and my son. If they're not true, you need to call me back. If they are true, don't call me back. Bye! So she hangs up, and then she gets a phone call back from her dad, and her dad is like, I did say all those things. I did hear that you were fucking the new boss. Fuck you, you're disloyal. Don't fucking tell me not to call you. Don't you call me until you finally get Derek to get off my ass. And then he hangs up, and Jasmine is like, my father is garbage. And right. I almost forgot the biggest part about this. You remember how Alan said you and your bastard son are a waste of space and all that garbage?
Yeah, did like that just go one way and not the other?
Derek did process that. Derek was like, she's got a kid? Is she married and still fucking me? And like all this garbage. So then he's like,
how do you hear bastard son or bastard kid and think married?
I don't know. So Derek then is like stalking her internet presence, and he's like, what can I find on her? Was she married? Did she have a boyfriend? How old is the kid? And he thinks this kid is like a toddler or something reasonable, and then he's like, this kid is 9 years old, and he does, you know, some basic math, like 2 + 2 = 4, and he's like, oh, this could very well be my child. And he's like, this is my child, let's be real. Fuck. So then he's like, I have to go find out what happened. Like, I have to go talk to her, but it's midnight, so he's like, I'm just gonna drive over to the area and see what's going on over there. So he drives over to her neighborhood, and he's just sitting outside her house, idling in a Porsche or some shit, and the cop shows up and is like, what the fuck you doing here? And Derek is like, I have registration, I got lost. So this cop is like, okay, let me check over this registration. And the cop comes back and he's like, yeah, checks out, get the fuck out.
I'm sorry, but like, a Porsche driving around a working class neighborhood.
I'd assume drugs. That sounds harsh, but like, I assume drugs anytime I see a car idling. I'm like, drugs. Oh my god, drug dealer. Oh my god. It wouldn't matter where I am. I would assume a car idling, drug deal. Drug deal. Especially a Porsche. It's like, what are you doing here? I don't live where people own Porsches. Get out of here. So this cop is like, you're lost? Do you want some directions? Get the fuck out. So Derek is like, yeah, I'll drive on. So Derek goes home, and he's like, when I wake up, I'm going straight back to that bitch's house to find out the truth. And so then on Jasmine's end, her son is at a sleepover. He has another wrestling match in the goddamn morning. Yeah, I don't understand. I thought they happen on a weekly basis. Not a once-a-day fucking basis. She's like, I have the house to myself. I'm asleep in. It's 6:30 in the morning when he wakes her ass up, and she gets downstairs and she's like,
that's so disrespectful.
Yeah, that's her point. She's like, first off, fuck you. Second, give me that fucking coffee. Because he's brought coffee, because he's like, she'll murder me if I don't, which is fair. It's like, yeah, I would too. I'm not a coffee person. So really, if you woke me up at 6:30 a.m., nothing would save you. And she's like, give me that fucking coffee, bitch. And she's like, also, you have no right. It's the weekend. There's no reason for you to be here. Fuck you for storming into my life, waking my ass up at 6:30 a.m. You have no goddamn right. And he's like, okay, only reasonable solution here is to kiss her. So he kisses her. Both their brains stop working. They have sex. And they fall asleep. And the next chapter, she wakes up because her son is like, Mom, I'm home. We should go to the meet. And he's like, oh my fucking god, somebody naked is in this bed. It's like, yeah, Jasmine, you didn't think about how that's probably going to scar your son. Also, Derek never fucking once mentioned to Jasmine that he knew her son is probably his son. So Derek is like, from her perspective, she's like, he came here to bother me about work. And then it's like, oh no, it's a booty call. She doesn't know that he knows. So her son shows up in her sentence like, who are you? Derek is like, I'm your father. And this kid, Jacob, is just like, prove it. Fucking prove it. And he's like, what did my dad say to my mom every night before he left her? And Derek like says some shit about, it's like, good night, my sweet princess. I'll be back to save you for more adventures the next morning or some shit like that. There's a princess involved. Derek says this to Jacob, and Jacob is like, you are my dad. And he's like, come look at my room and all my posters or some shit like that. And he invites him to his wrestling match, and Derek is like, yeah, of course, I'll come. You go ahead of me. And then Jasmine is like, you shouldn't have told him you were his father. And Derek is like, I am his father. And Jasmine is like, you don't know that. And Derek is like, you fucking saying I'm not his father, even though he looks like me, even though it fits the time frame, even though I know you wouldn't go hop off into bed with somebody else. And Jasmine's like, you shouldn't have assumed. And he's like, well, I am, and I'm pissed. I'm gonna go talk to my son now because I didn't know he existed for the past 9 years. And then Jasmine's like, time for another bathroom breakdown. So then what happens is that Jacob, Derek, and Jasmine, all three of them, get in Derek's Porsche and go to this kid's wrestling match. They all get there, and what happens is that, so you remember how I said that Jacob's coach had like a crush on Jasmine? He wants to ask her out. Mm-hmm. Well, Derek is there, and he's really hot, obviously. He came in a fucking Porsche. So a bunch of the moms are also like, who is this guy? And Jasmine is like, that's Jacob's dad. And they're like, oh, what's the story there? And she's like, he's reconnecting with Jacob. And one of these moms is described as a trampy soccer mom.
Okay.
who then goes over to Derek. So his trampy soccer mom goes over to Derek, and Jasmine is like setting up food, and she's like, I don't know why I'm feeling upset. And then Chuck comes over, and Chuck is like, who's that guy? And Jasmine's like, that's Derek. He's Jacob's dad. And Chuck is like a little nervous, and he makes a joke or something, and she's like, you're so funny. You know, and she's basically playing it up. And at this point...
Playing it up because she's nervous, or playing it up because she wants Derek to be...
Like, she's like, why am I flirting with him? And then she's like, because of the trampy soccer mom. So Chuck is flirting with her. He's going to ask her out. And mentally she's like, oh, I went too far. Shouldn't have done this. It's a mistake. And Chuck is like, let's go out for pizza. And she's like, at which point Derek shows up, puts an arm around her, and is like, I'm going to take all of the kids to get pizza. And Chuck is like, yeah, cool, it's like what I was talking about too, man. And Derek then kisses Jasmine, and Jasmine lets him, and mentally she's like, why does he get to talk to flirty soccer moms, but I can't talk to the coach? And also, he's kissing me in front of everyone. So it pretty much explicitly states that we're together, even though we aren't together, because we've never actually addressed that. We've now had sex a total of 3 times. He kisses her, and she's like, you had no right, yada yada yada, and he's like, save it when we get home. And then they get back to the house, and Jacob is super happy. He's like, you're gonna stay the night, right? Derek is like, yeah, of course I'm gonna stay the night. And he reads Jacob a bedtime story, and Jasmine is like, this is so sweet. Shit's gonna hit the fan. Sure enough, it does. Because then, when they leave Jacob, and Derek is like, you should have fucking told me. And Jasmine's like, well, I didn't. And he's like, why? Why didn't you? She doesn't, at this point, she doesn't bring up because you left me. She just says, I couldn't find you. And then time was going on, and we were doing just fine without you, and you seemed busy, and you didn't come back, and yada yada yada. And he's like, okay, well, here's the thing. I've already lost 9 years of my son's life.
He wants full custody.
Well, that's what she thinks. She's like, I'm a great mother. And he's like, no, don't get me wrong. Because he's like, I'm never spending another day without my son. Which is, you know, like, a little decent. But she also assumes what you think. And she's like, I'm a great mom. And he's like, oh, I didn't say I was a monster. I'm going to strip you away from my son who obviously loves you. If he didn't, I would. I would, though. Because he's like, I'm so angry with you, but I know he loves you, so I'm not going to do that. He's like, so we're going to live together. And she's like, you want to live here? And he goes, I'm not going to have other kids saying my son, telling my son that his mom is like a mistress or some shit. He's like, no. We're not going to just live together. We're going to be married. And at which point she's like, married? What are you talking about? That's an insane conclusion to come to.
Yeah,
after knowing you have a child for like 2 days now. Literally 2 days. And this dude is like, well, we're getting married. And she's like, what if I don't want to get married? And he goes, well, I can fight you for full custody. At which point she does math, and she's like, he has a lot of money. Let's get married. So she accepts his proposal. And he's like, cool, we're going to look at houses tomorrow. And she's like, okay. So then they go looking for houses. Jacob is super excited. She's kind of like, I don't want a new house. I really like my house. But he convinces her to go. They look at new houses. They buy a house. It's a bullshit. It's a McMansion, okay? We spend so much time moving into this stupid house, literally like 3 chapters, okay? It's ridiculous. They buy the house. Jasmine moves into the house. She gets really emotional when it's time to finish packing up her house, because she's like, I've lived here the whole time I've had Jacob, so 9 years. At which point I have a question. How do you have the money? Her dad didn't support her. Like, she paid for it herself, her words. She also went to college at the same time. Once again, no friends, no support system. How? Derek's cousins come over and they help unpack and shit like that. And they're all really nice with Jasmine. And they're moving into the house. And they get moved in. And Jasmine, she was sleeping in another bed. But she's like, that was the first night. Where's my actual room? And Derek is like, you'll sleep in my bed. And she's like, we're not having sex. And he's like, I didn't say we were. He's convoluted because he says to her, I'm going to wait until you come to me. if you're gonna issue that threat, you better fucking go through on it. Derek doesn't. He goes to her eventually. Not in this chapter, but in like the next chapter. So she stays in her bed and she's like, I slept so wonderfully. And meanwhile, he's like, I got 4 hours of sleep. Cousins come, they help unpack, they go furniture shopping. Jasmine buys tons of books. She spends $200 on books and she's like, I'm so sorry, I spent so much money. And Derek is like, I bought a bar stool for $200. Don't feel guilty. Meanwhile, she's like, well, okay, bitch. I've been living frugally, but okay. Cousins are like, so when's the wedding? She's like, I don't know. It's probably just gonna be like a justice of the peace. It's like you go to a courthouse and you just fast track that marriage. And Derek is like, no, it's not. We're gonna have your dream wedding because Jacob has pulled out this binder she has been saving for years and years for her perfect dream princess wedding. And it's like, you're 28 years old and you want to look like a goddamn princess. Listen, I shouldn't judge people. So yeah, so that Derek is like, that's the wedding we're having. Jasmine is like, okay, you're gonna give me my dream wedding when I know this is not gonna be my dream marriage. That seems fair. So yeah, so she's kind of dying inside. Then we do a massive time jump, like, or not massive, it's it's 3 days before the wedding. Yeah.
How long did it take to plan the wedding?
They don't say, but this author had to spend 3 chapters to move them into a house. So maybe it's for the best that we didn't bother planning a wedding. Okay? So now it's 3 days before the wedding, and she's like, she's having doubts. Jasmine is like, I'm just so nervous because he's working longer hours, and there's no real connection here.
Have they had sex yet?
They've had sex twice, but not since after the sun. Oh, like there's like one clinch when she's super emotional about selling the house, but then a neighbor is like, are you moving? And she's like, I was trying to get laid. But yeah, she's moving. So now, back to, that was a while ago. It was when they first started moving. 3 chapters ago. But it's 3 days before the wedding now, and she's having all these doubts and worries and concerns, and she's like, he works a lot. This isn't my ideal marriage. What will our marriage be like when we're finally together? Because here's the thing, she's not working anymore, or like her work has slowed down a lot, because she's like, I want to be a lot more present now that I don't have to work to support myself. But she is also like, I don't know what's there to sustain me in life. And it's like, that's why most people have careers. Just saying. So she's having doubts and concerns, and then somebody rings the doorbell, and she's like, who could that be? And when she answers the door, it's Amy, that hoe from like 7 chapters ago. And this woman is wearing a little sexy ensemble, and Jasmine is like, what are you doing here? She like has this conversation with this one where Amy is like, I'm dropping off paperwork. And Jasmine hasn't been told that Amy was fired, so she's like, that's valid, I guess. I don't like you being here and I resent your presence, because Amy is also like, you're a whore and a tramp and a homewrecker because we were going to get married. And Jasmine is like, then you should be angry with Derek and everything. And,
for real.
And Amy is just like, I'm waiting for him. And Jasmine's like, you can fucking do whatever the fuck you want, even though it's her fucking house. So Jasmine goes to bed, and when she wakes up, it's because Derek is in bed with her, and he's like, why did you let Amy into our house? And Jasmine's like, the host said she had paperwork for you. And he's like, oh, no. Sorry. I'm pretty sure they fuck. And then they have this discussion. Or maybe they have this discussion and then they fuck. Either way, there is some fucking involved. Okay. So the discussion is basically where like Derek is like, why did you invite her? And Jasmine is like, because she said she had paperwork. And Derek is like, I fired that bitch ages ago. And Jasmine is like, well, that bitch said she was fucking you and that you were going to propose to her. And Derek is like, well, that's garbage. I fired her because she wanted that to happen, and I didn't want that to happen. And so I got rid of her. And you shouldn't have allowed her into our home. And Jasmine is like, and while we're on this topic, if we're going to have a sexual relationship, okay, so this conversation happens after they fucked. Jasmine is just like, if we're going to have a sexual relationship, you can't fuck other women. And Derek is like, I don't. Like, that literally, have never fucked her. I haven't fucked anybody since I started fucking you. And Jasmine was like, thank you for the bare minimum. Thank you. Now it's the day of the wedding. Thank God we're almost done. It's the day of the wedding. She is in a horse-drawn carriage in her perfect wedding gown that has been handmade for her, yada yada yada. Pulls up to the church, and it's the church they were supposed to meet up when they were gonna run away at 18. It's been renovated and shit like that. And she sees this and she's like, keep driving, to the driver. The driver's like, you don't pay the bills. I don't know what to do.
I'm sorry. She was not told where they were going to get married?
No.
You were... Okay.
She apparently, I guess, handed it all over to Derek. I hope somebody pops up in the comments who's a diehard fan of this book and is like, actually, here's what really happened because you were slandering this book. I sincerely hope that happens. But yeah, so she doesn't know. They pull up to the church and she just starts. She's like, I'm having another emotional breakdown.
And there aren't any bathrooms available.
Exactly. So then what happens is Derek's dad comes out and he's like, hey, Jasmine, what's going on? And Jasmine is just like, why would he bring me here when this is the place he left me 10 years ago? And the dad is like, I'm gonna go outside. and then Derek comes outside and he's like, what's going on? My dad just said you needed to talk to me. And Jasmine, in tears, she's like, why did you bring me here? Why do you want to hurt me even more after you first left me? She's like, is this some big joke and you're gonna leave me here alone again? Like, is that what's gonna happen? He's like, alone? Again? And she goes, yeah, like 10 years ago when I wanted to elope with you. And he's like, explain that night to me in detail. And she goes, okay, I showed up a little late because I figured, you'd wait for me. And you weren't there. And I waited all day and you still weren't there. And Derek is like, oh my fucking god. Okay. Awkward.
My bad.
So Derek is like, okay, what happened from my side of the story that I should have explained ages ago instead of just now is that I was at the church way early and your dad showed up and was basically like, here's money, you whore. And I was insulted and I ran away and I plotted revenge for 10 years. He doesn't actually say the revenge part. Mm-hmm. But then Jasmine is like, this whole time it's just been a huge misunderstanding. And it's like, here's the question. If your love was so real, why didn't you pick up a goddamn phone? Why weren't you just like, let me talk to the bitch? At a minimum, you get to be angry. It's like, if you're gonna I would have taken the money too, by the way. I would have taken the fucking money. I would have been like, I'm not a whore, but this is reimbursement for wasted time.
Yeah.
Just saying. They explain this whole misunderstanding. They confess they're both madly in love with one another again, even though they've done nothing to kind of like prove they're a real couple or reconnect. I mean, they fucked. I guess that's enough, right? And then they go through with the wedding. And Jacob is the best man. He wears a little tuxedo. It's cute. It's cute. It's cute. And then we have an epilogue in which it's Jacob's 10th birthday and she's hella preggers. And all the cousins are there and Derek's dad is there and they're all like, we're so happy she's pregnant. Now to get these other two cousins married off. And it's set up for the next 2 books, but they're probably just as horrible. Don't read them. And that's the Tycoon's Revenge. Ta-da! It's a trash book. Don't buy it or read it.
0 to 10. Would not recommend.
Exactly. It was garbage, guys. I can't believe that was my first... That's what lit the fuse.
So, please put in the comments what your first romance novel was.
Oh yeah, do that! Please share. I hope it was way better than mine.
And maybe put in the comments what's your really guilty pleasure romance novel?
Yes, the trope that you know is bad, but you love it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Bye. Oh, like and subscribe too, hoes. Now bye, for real.